So now we're going to overload operators for the time class. So overloading an operator in C++ means that you can redefine operators so that they work for your class, or provide definitions for operators so they work with your class. So let's make time.for.cc. Whoops, let me change that name to something. There we go. And essentially what I want to do, now a lot of times you'll implement methods like add and equal and less than, but it would be convenient to also provide implementations of the overloaded operators. So now instead of using the add method, they could use plus equals. Instead of using equal, they could use the equal operator, the equality operator. Same thing for less than. So in C++, if you want to overload, and we're going to overload the operators plus equal, equality, and less than. To overload those operators, you simply implement a method that is the keyword operator followed by the operator you want to overload. So we just need to implement these three methods. Well, these three in this case. So these are the methods that we want to overload, or that we want to implement so that we can overload those operators. And they correspond, directly to these methods. And in fact, they'll have exactly the same definitions. So the plus equal operator is going to have a void return type, and its parameter is going to be a constant reference to a time object, and it is not constant. The equality operator is going to return a bool. You're going to have the same parameter, and it is a constant method. And then the same thing with the less than operator. So there we have it. Now logically, these are going to be identical. So operator plus equal is going to be logically identical to add. The equality operator is going to be logically equivalent to equal, and operator less than is going to be logically equivalent to less than. You could just implement only these. We could get rid of add, equal, and less than and just take the code and put them in these operators. Or what I'm going to do is I'm going to have these operators actually call these methods. So programmers will have a choice about whether they want to use the overloaded operators or whether they want to use the actual methods named for these operations. So I'll just put these down here. You implement these overloaded operators like any other method, just with this particular name. And to call add, all I have to do is call the add method and then pass in the argument time. Same thing for the overloaded equality operator. Don't forget my constant keyword. And it is going to return whatever a call to equal returns, passing in the value of time. Rookie mistake, forgetting that return. Can't forget the return. You've got to return what the caller returns, what the call returns. Here we go, return less than, and pass in the time object. So let's make sure that I've got all my syntax correct. G++ time4.cc. Made a little error. Plus equals does not. Candidate is. See what I did? I've got a bool. I've got a bool return type here. I've got a void return type there. So I need to go fix that. So I have a void there, so I must have written bool down below. There it is, so I just say void here. See if that fixes it. It does. So now let's go look at some test code. Instead of less than, now I can compare T1 and T2 using the actual less than operator. And you can see that it prints less than. And if I change this to, now it should say not less than. I can do the same thing with equal. Let me just make another point here. You know, there's no magic happening here. I can certainly use, so what happens is this gets rewritten as T1 dot operator less than, and then passing in this parameter. So it's really just the compiler rewrites this, the syntax that we use into this method call. So this will compile and it runs exactly the same way. So all the compiler is doing is when it sees this less than operator, it's simply plugging in that call to operator less than. So really there's nothing fancy going on. So now if I want to compare these two objects using the equality operator, I can do that. And it says that they're not equal, and in fact they're not equal. I can make them equal, and it should print that they are equal, just like that. And finally, I can add the two time objects together. So I can say, instead of saying add T1 to T2, I can actually use the plus equals operator. And there we go. So this is how you overload operators in C++. Overloading operators lets you define operators for the classes you write. To do that, you simply implement a method starting with the keyword operator, followed by the actual operator you want to overload, and you implement it like any other method.